Hey, Blue Table fans. Yeah. Did you miss this face? Because you haven't seen me for a while, and now you're about to see a lot of me. And sometimes I think how much better my life has gone because of my amazing good looks, right? Like you can take beauty for granted and not realize how much of an advantage it is that to have what my daughter calls pretty privilege. And so there you go. You're welcome, children. All right, so it's like, shut up, you decrepit old Nosferatu. Get to the point. I had somebody who watches the channel said, hey, what about if you're just starting painting on commission? How do you go about building it up? What's the deal? And, oh no, please keep that on. I'm making a video. Do you want to be on it? You want to come say hi? No, she doesn't want to say hi at this time? All right, sounds good. All right, so anyway, first off, I started painting professionally in late 2003. Officially on January 1st, 2004, so that would like help me keep it straight. And so as you can tell, I'm coming up on 19 years. Going to be 20 years in January 1st, 2024. That's blowing my mind. And recently, because I've done that full time, and of course, as the company grows, my role in the company shifts down to be doing more and more of a much smaller thing. And I'll talk a little bit on this video about that. But of course, right now we're just talking about solo painting. The answer is to be prolific. Just paint every day, and get it out there. Get it up on your social media. When I started, there really wasn't social media, and it was just word of mouth. In fact, word of mouth, and I had an ad somewhere. Where did I have an ad? I had one ad out, and it was on something. It was on Bartertown. And I just picked up clients here and there, and 2004 was an age where you could just plant your brush in the ground and you would just get all the orders you could possibly need. And that was really the problem that solo painters would have, is they would get so booked out that you would be, and then of course you would lose new customers because it wasn't uncommon for solo artists to be booked out 6 months or even a year. And I had a friend of mine, not at my behest, he just went out and did this study. He found all the painting commission services he possibly could. I think he found like 500. I think you would find more like 5,000 today. So many. And so he found out that most of them just weren't, they had other jobs, they weren't taking commissions at all. And the ones that did were like 6 months to a year out, and it took quite a while to get stuff done. So I gave you the answer, and that is keep painting. Paint whatever, if you have no commissions, just paint whatever you can get your hands on, and put it up, even though it isn't perfect. Having things up consistently is better than just being having this amazing stuff. And a lot of boutique painters are like that. So what I'm telling you now isn't always true. Most boutique painters, they'll put out they might spend a month on like one model, and I'm just wringing my eyeballs trying to figure out how they stay focused on that one figure for so long. And they're like, today I finished the lower half of the left leg. Behold how perfect it is. And I'm just like, and the other thing is to so my advice to new up-and-coming commission painters who are at the solo level is don't try and make it perfect before you put it up there. Just get it up there. Doesn't have to be great. And then the other thing is make sure you cross-reference the time it takes you to do it versus the amount of money that you're making. Because a lot of new commission painters, what they do is they go, well, to get the things, I'm gonna have to make it look really good. And then they don't really keep track of like, well, what is the actual time that it's gonna take? So then they take a person sees this, oh, your model's great. Can I get 200 models done? And he says, oh yeah, it's X dollars per model. And then he starts painting them, and he's just like, oh my gosh, I'm making $2 an hour painting these figures. And because commission painting obviously is, in the vast majority of cases, I almost said the mass majority, of cases is paid by the model and not by the hour. And when I was very first starting, I heard, I was at a convention, I was just promoting my stuff in 2004, and in fact, yeah, and I overheard, you know, oh, this person charges $10 an hour. She painted my Terminators. It took her 5 hours per Terminator. It cost me $50 each, and of course I won't be doing that again anytime soon. And that's a case where nobody won. The artist didn't get paid a lot for their time, the client didn't get a great deal, and so it just didn't work out. So watch your time, make sure you get you get a sustainable price, and then you gotta leverage good techniques to get that quality up and do it in a reasonable amount of time. And of course, there are but guys, I've explored every possible angle of this industry, and it is, it's really, there is a hard limit. Like, if you had a certain standard, you simply could not get it faster than that as a solo painter. You could get it faster if you had like a giant assembly line, which I have not tried. We, in terms of like having all 20 steps that are needed in a model to get done, being done by 20 different people. And I have found, like at higher levels where you have like an actual team, that maybe you could have 2 or 3 people involved. And that actually can leverage out to be good for both sides of the equation, that the client gets a really good product and it works out in terms of time and money for the artists as well. So that's my second thing. Scaling up is a completely different topic. Basically, if the free market rewards you with a lot of orders coming in, then that means that you can do a couple of things. You can go for economy of scale, in which case you're going to need a team, and or you can start raising your prices. And I think most boutique painters do the raising of prices thing. They just start bumping it. It's like, well, I'm booked out 6 months. I don't have any time. There's only one of me. So if you want to get on the docket, you've got to pay this higher price. So that would be my third thing. Would be get your prices adjusted well, and get them up there sooner rather than later. Don't get booked out at your introductory rates where you're just trying to get anybody to do it. Ooh, this is good advice for me in terms of my paid DMing thing. Or is it? I don't know. All right, anyway, well, that's my advice to you. Is if you get to the point where you're ready to scale up, contact me again. I'll make another video about that. I actually know more about scaling. I read business scaling than soloing. And of course, I know a ton about soloing. So, this has been a bit disjointed. Well, let me tell you, while I'm at it, why don't I just tell you my story? First off, I started painting in 1997, and I loved it. I had some friends, they brought over some White Dwarf magazines to one of the role-playing game things that I was doing, and so I got into it through White Dwarf, and then so I started painting, and I didn't know the first thing about it. I got tons of bad advice. I primed my first models in gloss black. It was terrible. I realized the mistake I had made, and they were metal figures, so I took acetone and a brush, took all that black primer off them, couldn't get it all out. Oh, I look back and I'm like, what a nightmare. And I use craft paints like Apple Barrel and Americana and stuff like that, and those are absolutely, they're so bad. The quality's so low. And Then, of course, I discovered better brand. I've been using Vallejo for over 20 years now, at least. And so I had a game shop in Oregon for a while, and it never entered my mind to paint for money. And of course, if it had, I never would have left Oregon or went on the great adventures that I did. And then I was a school teacher for 4 years. That was in San Francisco. And in the summer of 2003, I didn't have anything to do over the summer. My wife was looking at me like, hey, we need money, you can't just sit around. And I was, all right, off I go then. And I was down at the game shop lamenting that I didn't have something to do for the summer. And a friend of mine was like, hey, why don't you just paint my dwarf army and I'll pay you to do that. And maybe that'll be enough to get you by for the month or two. And I was like, awesome. So I poked around just a little bit. Again, the internet wasn't like a giant thing at the time. And I mean, it existed, but not how we know it now. And so I gave him a price for his dwarfs. I painted his dwarf army in like a week because I was really good. I was really practiced by that time. And that's really the early days story, is that I was so into painting. I couldn't get enough. I'm nuts for it. And when I was a school teacher, I used to get up at 2 a.m. Go to bed at 8, get up at 2 a.m. and just paint. I loved paint. I was working on an Eldar army at the time. I was working on Space Wolves for myself. And I just absolutely was bonkers for it. And so I finished his army, and he was very impressed. I did a display board for it and everything. I wish I would have taken better pictures of this. And and on the run-up to that, I showed up at the game shop every week with new things that I had painted. I would show up at, so now we're going back to like 2001, 2002. I would show up at Rogue Trader tournaments hoping to get best painted. And I did interesting conversions, and I was bananas for it. I loved it. And I remember one time, instead of best painted, they gave me best sportsmanship. So I got up there and I'm like, all I got was lousy sportsmanship? This sucks. And get it? Get the joke? So, yeah, so I absolutely loved it. And I was well known at the shop. And then that same day, 2 other guys approached me and was like, is it true that you did so-and-so's army from like 1 week to the next? I'm like, yeah, I just knuckled down and did it. And because I have stick-to-itiveness. And so 2 guys wanted me to do I had an undead army and a Skaven army. And I was like, all right, sounds good. And it never, from that moment, it never stopped. It was like almost like doubling. Like I just had like more and more. And my one guy was like, hey, can you paint these 20 tanks? People had just all these projects to do. They didn't have time to do them. I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's loads of money like flying around. And it was really cool times. And let me tell you, my operation was pretty humble. I was in a 1-car garage that didn't have a car in it. I just had the laundry on one side and the storage on the other side. I had this tiny little desk. And it was great. So, yeah, so nowadays, I don't know how it would be. I think, but I do know prolificness, being very productive, that's the very first key to it. You can't wake up and just not feel like it. You got to plow through, you got to get your stuff up there. Even now, if you attend this YouTube channel, you'll see stuff that I'm painting for my own projects, stuff that's being painted for clients. And so if you are going to, I'll give you the first step of expanding up. The first step is what I would call apprentices, or I guess side help. So in my case, I had this giant Bretonian army to do, and I was like, oh, I do not want to base all these guys. So I found there was a housewife in our condo complex. We knew the family, and I was like, hey, you want to pick up some extra cash helping me paint these little figures? And she did. So basically, I shifted some of the rote work to this other person, and that would be the next thing that you could do, is just get somebody very low level, well, excuse me, not low level, low key, and and get them to do some of the simpler processes. And that, of course, will leverage you out to take on more of the good stuff. All right, well, that's all I got to say about that. Thanks for tuning in. Comments are welcome. I'd love it if you gave me more topics to talk about because, of course, I'm a self-serving glory hound, and I like to hear the sound of my own voice and look at my face in the camera as I'm making these videos because I think I'm awesome, apparently.